I was a fairly unfit kid growing up. I mean, PE class for me was the stuff of nightmares. And because I was no good at it, I avoided sports like the plague, which in turn just made me more unfit. 6 years ago, I suffered some excruciating pain in my back, which turned out to be a slip disc. This woke me up to just what bad shape I was in. I had to see a specialist and then get on to a journey of physical fitness. Now, I'd like to begin with a thought experiment. I want you all to imagine that it is you who's broken an arm or a leg. Imagine the amount of pain that you are feeling. Now, my question to you is this. Will you go seek a specialist for that pain? I'll give you till the end of this talk to consider your answer. Now, I'm a psychologist, so I know what you're thinking right now. You're probably thinking, what's to consider? Why would I not go and see a specialist for so much pain? Who would not see a specialist for so much pain? Well, I know plenty of people who wouldn't. In fact, I'll bet that many of you sitting here would not go see a specialist for pain if the only difference was that that pain and those wounds were not in your arm or your leg, but in your mind. In fact, I bet that 100% of the people sitting over here have suffered from some emotional wounds and scars at some point in their life. I bet many of us are still hurting right now. We all wound, we all hurt, we all break. Look around you. I actually want you to look around you. Look to your left. You may see a man who's lost all pleasure in his work but is forced to continue working. Or look to your right and you may see a lady who cries herself to sleep every night and doesn't know why. Or look behind you at the boy who's stopped talking to his father since years and doesn't know where to start. Or just look straight at the stage at the lady who's nervous as hell about giving her first TEDx talk. We all hurt, we all break. And not necessarily from the drastic blows of mania and depression and anxiety and psychosis, but from those daily hassles, that insidious stress of those daily things, that financial decision that needs to be made, that relationship conflict that needs to be resolved, that math exam that needs to be taken, yeah? Now, let me backtrack a little. I'm not suggesting that we are an unhappy lot, okay? In fact, many of us would not classify ourselves as unhappy. In fact, we would say that we are very comfortable with our lives, that we are fine. And this is really true for India especially today, isn't it? India is seeing her first generation today which is really being able to look after itself. We are really focusing on looking good. We are investing more and more in physical fitness, in cosmetic surgery, in fashion. We are going to the gym so that we can build the muscle that doesn't atrophy later in life. We are getting bariatric surgeries done so that there's less strain on our heart later in life. We are paying attention to our attire, to our abs, to our nose, to our teeth. Are we paying any attention to our thoughts, to our feelings? Are we even asking ourselves these questions? We check our weight probably every once in a week. Do we check on our emotions half as often? We don't. And we don't because thoughts aren't supposed to matter. And who cares that I'm feeling angry or anxious or depressed or wretched today? I'll get over it. The trouble is, we don't get over it. We simply manage to push them behind in some crevice of the mind where we don't have to meet them. We simply become comfortable with being not okay. Let me give you an example. There is this organization called Prafulta Psychological Services in Bombay, which is doing some phenomenal work in the area of mental health. Recently, they ran a citywide program to help school children get in touch with their feelings. Now, just let's wait for a minute and listen to this. Doesn't it sound ridiculous that we are at a stage that our children need getting in touch with their feelings? Anyway, the program consisted of giving them paper and helping them express their feelings of joy or sadness or fear or dread or jealousy and so forth on that paper in the form of art, drawing, paintings, poetry and so on. What we found was something stupendous. Halfway into this activity, many of those previously happy, composed, stoic children broke down. They just broke down. Of course, the activity was followed with workshops on how to deal with difficult emotions. But the point that I'm trying to make is this. This is where even our children are today. Our children, who are supposed to be the most in touch with their feelings. Our children are unmindful of their thoughts, afraid of their feelings, and okay with being not okay, just like us. Really, if there is an elephant in the room for us Indians today, it is mental health. The WHO predicts that by the year 2020, 2 out of 10 Indians will suffer from some mental illness or the other. This is scary. This means that if we don't act now, if there are 100 people sitting in this room, within the next 5 years, 20 of us will suffer from some mental illness. And God knows how many, as Vidita just spoke, from the effects of stress, those headaches, those migraines, those clogged arteries, that hypertension, those heart attacks. But we won't talk about it. We certainly won't seek help for it. Let's face it, we Indians have trouble seeking help with anything mental. It's a mental block. In fact, in this country, even the colloquial term for mad is mental. Anything mental frightens us. Now, I'm a psychologist, so I like to explore why this happens. So let's just explore for a minute what exactly is happening. What is behind that shame and that fear and that stigma about going to a therapist, going to a specialist for something mental? It's this meaning that we have learned to attach, haven't we, to counselor and therapist and psychotherapy and counseling. We have this negative dialogue that goes on in our minds when we hear this word. What? A counselor? A therapist? Am I so weak? Am I crazy? Am I a psycho? Am I so feeble-minded that I can't take care of myself? Am I such a sissy? Am I a failure? And of course, that big daddy question which has enriched and enhanced so many lives throughout history. What will people think? What will people think? What will people think? We conjure up in our minds images of straitjackets and electric shocks. We think that walking into a therapist's office, we'll come back out somewhat compromised, somewhat lesser humans, ridiculed by people, shunned by society. Now let's see where these connections are coming from. Obviously, these connections have impinged onto our collective consciousness from history. We know that historically, mental health was not understood. People didn't understand what mental illness was, where it's coming from, where it's going to go. People couldn't predict, people couldn't tell. And so anybody who dared to show or express even a smidgen of emotional distress was either branded as being a witch or being possessed or being somewhat out of control, this maniacal image, and these people were shunned and tortured and burnt to the stakes and so forth. We know these things, so we know where these stereotypes are coming from. It's understandable that these stereotypes are coming. Now let me describe to you exactly what comes to pass in a therapist's office. There are 60 minutes. Many of them are very, very uncomfortable for the client. In fact, the point comes where the client becomes extremely terrified of what's going to happen next. It's very scary. But the beautiful thing for me to see as a therapist is that most of these clients will rise to the challenge as an effect of counseling. The rest of psychotherapy is simply about helping that client find within himself the resources and the strengths that he needs to heal himself. The process of counseling, of having that unconditional positive regard, of feeling safe enough to delve into my consciousness where I will meet my demons, but I will also meet my strengths. That process is so therapeutic that it heals. And sometimes a really marvelous thing happens, which brings me to the second part of my talk. Sometimes, just sometimes, when the client becomes aware of this newfound strength, which was always within himself, the client latches onto it and only focuses on making it grow. The client is flexing a muscle, so to speak. And the really awesome part about the whole thing is that now the issue that the client came with suddenly becomes a non-issue, not because it became any easier, but because the client got stronger. And this phenomenon, ladies and gentlemen, this is what we as Indians really need to become mindful about today. This reservoir of unlimited potential that we all possess and that we would all find within ourselves if we only dared to look beyond all that fear and shame and ridicule and all that rubbish and garbage that covers it. If there is one thing that I would like for you to take away from this talk, it is this. Yes, being a human being is about feeling depressed. It is about being angry. It is about brokenness. It is about despair. But as human beings, we also possess the almost exclusive capacity to possess virtues and strengths, wisdom, compassion, gratitude, transcendence. In the therapist's office and outside it, when we find these strengths, when we focus on them, and when we build those muscles, we are doing more than just the first aid of coping with a stress to survive. We are building the muscle to thrive. Shall we put this to the test? Let's do an activity for a minute. We all know that spiel about counting 3 things that happened today that I'm grateful for. Yeah, we won't be doing that. Okay. What we will be doing instead is we'll be thinking about our weekend so far. Yeah, and thinking about 3 things that did not happen in that span of time that we are grateful for. Okay. For example, you did not break your pinky finger yesterday, because if you had broken that pinky finger, your attention would have been 100% consumed by that pain, and the one thing you would have wanted most in life would be for that pain to go away, right? But you haven't in fact broken the pinky finger, and you are grateful for that. So just take a few seconds to think of 3 things that did not happen that you're grateful for. I thought of, I didn't wake up with a bad throat, so I can give this talk. I did not get fatally injured in a freak accident that involved a tree falling on my head on the way here, and no tidal wave has swept yet over St. Xavier's College and killed us all. It sounds funny, doesn't it? It sounds very amusing and it sounds ridiculous, but the point is that all these things are very possible. They have happened to other people at other times, right? The possibilities of what could go wrong are literally infinite. Should we not be grateful that none of these infinite things are happening to us right now? My bet is, if you do this exercise for the next 5 days, even through the worst times of your days, you will emerge out of them with hope. Hope is a strength. So is gratitude. One strength begets another. There's a psychologist called Barbara Fredrickson in the United States who has been working on positive emotion and who has found this amazing theory called the Broaden and build theory, which basically says that when we become aware of a strength and when we build on it, it is in the nature of that strength to broaden our repertoire of thoughts and experiences and actions which put us in touch with other strengths and help us find those. And that strength will then help us find another one on which we will hopefully build. And so continues the upward spiral of positive affect. We are basically building our well-being muscle. Just as if I train my legs at the gym, I'm making them stronger to be able to run faster. And if I can run faster, I can run longer, and that helps me build my stamina to train better, right? We are basically building our well-being muscle. And wouldn't we all love to be caught up in this vortex of well-being rather than one of distress? Counseling was never about electric shocks and straitjackets. It has always been about finding within yourself the capacity to heal yourself. And today, counseling is at a stage of positive psychotherapy, which says that counseling not only heals, but it also helps us grow into more than what we are. Counseling is no longer just a treatment. In fact, it has potential to become a supplement that can possibly make the concept of treatment redundant. Imagine this. Does it make us weak to seek it? The Indian cricket team has been undergoing group therapy for years under the terms of mental conditioning and all that. Let's you call this guy weak. You may not walk out of here alive. So this is where we stand today with counseling. And where do we stand with our psyches? Where do we Indians stand? It's high time that we shrugged off these stupid, ridiculous thoughts of fear and guilt and shame about going into therapy. We are at a time in the world when science and spirituality are slowly converging, where you have the Dalai Lama meeting with the best neuroscientists in the world to figure out the neurology and the efficacy behind virtues like wisdom and compassion and altruism. When our own Bhagavad Gita is being hailed by many as one of the most advanced psychotherapeutic treatises of all time, that not only wants to survive, but wants to thrive in a world which, let's face it, is only getting more and more stressful. Guess what? We make this culture, you and I. Every time somebody is lauded for seeking mental health through therapy, we are helping. Every time we choose to put aside our stupid, ridiculous thoughts of shame and fear and guilt and focus on our well-being, we are helping. Every time we choose not only to fix ourselves, but to do more than that, to grow, to enhance ourselves, we are helping. And guess who we are helping? So back to my journey of physical fitness. My back is fine now. Thank you very much for asking. But what I want to say is that while I was on this journey and I was trying out various types of exercise that got me to where I am, I started falling in love with the idea of becoming strong, so that I started doing new things to become stronger and stronger and stronger. Recently, I have joined CrossFit, which is basically PE class multiplied by 30,000, and where people do ridiculous things like this. Okay, I can't do that yet. It's very challenging, but I know that I will get there, because I'm in love with making myself strong, and I'm going to get there, because I'm going to grow to be able to get there. I would show you my biceps if it weren't terribly inappropriate. Maybe you can ask me later and I'll give you a punch. Yeah, then you'll see. So that all sort of winds up this talk, but let's first get to your answer, shall we? What's your answer? Will you go see a specialist for that broken leg, arm, or will you let some ridiculous sense of shame and fear just let you keep suffering? And now let me take one step further and ask you, will you wait for that arm or that leg to break so that then you can do your stretches to fix it? Or will you do your stretches now, build that muscle so that it never breaks? If the answer is obvious, then let's do ourselves the huge favor of according the same respect to that part of our body which puts us on top of the food chain, our minds. Thank you very much.